Alright, so today I'll be explaining to you about the topic of heat. Alright, so we have talked a lot about this, but now I want to make it more clear to you about what heat is and why is it important that we have to learn about this concept. Okay, so before we begin, these are the words that you need to know and you need to use when you are answering questions, okay, related to heat. So they are heat gain, heat loss, gain heat, lose heat, evaporation, and condensation. Alright, so why do we need to know about heat? So for example, over here, you see this picture of the different states of matter. So there's solid, there's liquid, and then there's gas. So the reason why we need to know about heat is because it allows us to explain how the states of matter changes. So let me explain to you further. Alright, so for example, you have a solid here, which is an ice. So what happens when ice gains heat? It becomes a liquid. So it becomes a liquid. And what happens when liquid gains heat? It becomes gas. Alright, so the reverse process is true. What I mean by that is that if gas loses heat, it becomes liquid. And if liquid loses heat, it becomes a solid. Alright, so that is one reason why we need to learn about the states, about heat, is because it helps us explain and understand how the different states of matter change between the different states. Alright, so now the second reason why we have to learn about heat is because of the water cycle. Alright, so the water cycle, for example, explains how water is recycled through the environment. So just let me write that down for you. ENV here refers to environment, okay? Alright, so let's take a look at what I mean. So imagine you have a pool of water here, so like Bedok Reservoir, or like Pasir Ris Beach. So this is your water. And then you have your sun here, right? Okay, so over here, what we see is that the water gains heat from the sun and then it evaporates. So you see how gaining heat is important for evaporation. And as it gains heat and it evaporates, it becomes water vapor. So from our liquid form here, we become gas. Alright, so then we get the water vapor rises, right? As it rises and it reaches the sky, it cools down. So when it cools down, what you get is water vapor loses heat, and then it becomes the clouds, which is basically in a liquid form. You might not see this, but if you go up to the clouds, it's actually liquid form. Alright, so this is what happens. So when the clouds get too heavy, it rains. And what you get is these water droplets entering back into the water bodies, which explains your water cycle. Okay, so these are the two reasons why you need to know about heat. States of matter is one, and then the second one is because it helps you explain the water cycle. Alright, so now let's take a closer look at these two pictures here, where I will explain to you the process of evaporation using science terms. Okay, so remember, you need to use the words or the vocabulary of science in order to answer science questions. Alright, so what do you see here? You see a hot beaker of water, and then you see some steam that is moving up from the water. So basically what we are seeing here is the process of evaporation. So your hot water here, so it's gaining heat, right, as you are boiling the water. So imagine there's a fire down below here that is causing this beaker to gain heat, and as it gains heat, this liquid water in the liquid form becomes what you see here, which is water vapor. So to explain this, you need to say, one, as you heat the water, it gains heat. And then secondly, you have to say, as water gains heat, it evaporates. And during that evaporation, you see that liquid is converted to gas. So this is your water vapor. So as you can see here, I've used a couple of the key terms that needs to be in your answer. Gains heat. So see again, gains heat. I use the word evaporates, and then I use from liquid to gas. So all of this needs to be in your answer in order for it to be a good answer. Alright? Okay, so now I will teach you how to apply this concept of evaporation and how is it useful to us. So that is the question that we will try to answer. Why is evaporation important? So we already talked about one reason why evaporation is important, which is in the water cycle. It enables the water cycle to continue, right? Because it allows water to become clouds in the water cycle. So now I will give you another reason why water is important. Why evaporation is important. It's because it helps us keep cool. So remember that. So you might be wondering, how does it allow us to keep cool? So as you can see, this guy over here, what is happening to him? He's sweating, right? So you can see the sweat that is on him. So he must have been exercising and then he started to sweat. So now let us take a look at how evaporation keeps us cool. So now I'm going to just draw an image of a person. Alright, so imagine this person is you. Okay, so you have just finished playing soccer and then you have started to sweat. You've started to sweat. So the blue markings are sweat. Alright, so after you've played soccer, you would realize that your body is very hot. You feel that there is a significant increase in the temperature of your body. So your temperature of your body increase, right? After you've played sports. So then your body wants to get rid of this excess heat. It wants to cool down. So then how does it do it? So you remember that your body is sweat. The blue markers that are on this image over here. So what happens is that I'm going to use a yellow marking here. So what happens is that these sweat that is on the body here actually the sweat gains heat from your body over here, so it takes the heat. So the sweat gains heat from your body to evaporate. So remember that if you take heat from something, that thing that you take heat from loses heat. So in our example over here, if the sweat takes the heat from your body and then it uses it to evaporate, your body loses heat. Okay, so when your body loses heat, you feel cooler. So that is why evaporation is important, because it allows us to understand how sweating helps us keep cool. Alright, so I hope you have understood this concept. So just look at the different annotations that I've made and look at this diagram and try to understand what is happening. Okay, so an important thing from this lesson that I need you to remember and to note is that when you take heat or you gain heat from something, that thing you take it from loses heat. Alright? So it loses heat and then it starts to cool. However, if that heat source continues to supply heat, in terms, for example, your stove, then it doesn't really lose heat, but what you get is a continuous source of heat. But for the body, as you stop playing soccer, your body starts to cool down, right? So your body is not producing any more additional heat. And with the sweat taking away the heat from your body actually becomes cooler. Alright? So I hope you have understood that part over there. Alright, so now that we have covered evaporation, let's talk about this picture over here. So this picture over here is actually a picture of a cold bottle, and you see some water droplets outside. So some questions that I have heard from students is that, is the bottle leaking? Is this water from the bottle? The answer is no. The bottle is not leaking. If the bottle is leaking, you would see that the water level in the bottle keeps on decreasing, but that is not what we observe. So actually, this is what is happening. So for example, I have a bottle here. Okay. So let's say the surface of my bottle, or my bottle, is 0 degrees Celsius, and then the surface of my environment around, so remember ENV is an environment, is 30 degrees Celsius. So within the air that is around the surrounding environment, there is water vapor in the air. So this water vapor in the air is 30 degrees Celsius. So as the warm water vapor from the surrounding air touches the cool surface of the water bottle, which is 0 degrees Celsius, it starts losing heat. So what happens when water loses heat? When water vapor loses heat? Correct, you get water droplets. So you will get water droplets outside of your water bottle. Okay, so what matters when we're talking about condensation is the difference in temperature between this surface and the surrounding air. Okay? However, after we leave the bottle for, let's say, an hour outside, so after 1 hour, okay, we realize that outside the bottle there are no more water droplets. We realize that outside the water droplets is already gone. So how can we explain this? The answer is simple. So because just now you had these water droplets outside of the water bottle, we see that the water bottle is actually gaining heat, because if you take a look at this, it is actually losing heat, right? But it is gaining heat from the surrounding. So therefore, the water bottle temperature would now be around 30 or 28 to 30 degrees Celsius. Therefore, the difference between this and the air and the surrounding air is very small. Therefore, no condensation. Okay. So I hope from my examples you have learned how to describe the process of evaporation and condensation, and you understood the different vocabulary that you need to use. So just to recap, what you need to know is heat gain, heat loss, then your two processes, evaporation and condensation, and then you can also mention about your 3 states of matter. All right. So if you have any questions, do ask me, and I will get back to you in the nearest time possible. Thank you.